2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Every game matters for the Reds' playoff hopes. We'll talk to Mo Egger about their pursuits. Plus,
the legacy will be his players. They don't forget.
Honoring a local legend, a look back at Coach Jack Campbell's impact. And the Bengals are back on the field. We got our guy Ben Baby with us to share his camp observations.
From WCPO 9 Sports, this is Sports of All Sorts.
What up? Welcome to Sports of All Sorts. I'm Reggie Wilson. Football is back and fans everywhere rejoice. We may or may not see Joe Burrow in game action until week 1, but just the fact that he's out there at training camp brings hope to the faithful for great things for this season. More on them in a bit, but a lot to get to in this show, so let's get started with the baseball team featuring the hottest hitter in the league right now. It's not Shohei, it's Joey. But David Bell gave Votto the day off as the Reds try to win the series against the Mets. Max Schrock got the start at first, and he must have had Votto's bat because he went off. Solo blast gives the Reds a 1-0 lead. More on him in a bit, but let's talk about Vladimir Gutierrez. He dominated. Took a no-hitter into the 5th inning. He goes 7, struck out 4, only gave up 1 run. And we go back to Schrock. Have a day, young man. How about 5 for 5 for the first time in his career? And the Reds roll 7-1, first series win at Citi Field since May of 2013. So Mad Max, how did you do it?
Man, I wish I knew I'd do it more often. No, I was just getting up there trying to see some good pitches and not try and do too much with the ball today. That was about it.
Max Schrock, not too excitable, but I got Mo Egger is. Hear him every day on ESPN 1530. What's up, brother?
Reggie, how you doing?
Good, good. So the Reds go 5-2 on this road trip. How encouraged are you by their performance this week?
Well, what a difference a week makes, right? I mean, a week ago at this time, we're talking about the windup of a pretty disastrous homestand, both in terms of what happened on the field, losing 6 out of 9. They lose Michael Lorenzen, they lose Nick Castellanos, and we flip around 7 days later. This team has just gone 5-2 on the road. They took 2 out of 3 against a first-place New York Mets team. Michael Lorenzen is back, and Nick Castellanos, I think, is progressing nicely. At the same time, I think you could also ask, what difference does a week make? Because this team played very well this week. They won 5 out of 7, and they're further out of first place today than they were last Sunday night. It illustrates how hard this is going to be. But I tell you what, you really have to like Vladimir Gutierrez because he took the ball after both of the losses on this road trip. Both of the losses were gut punches. Both of the losses were walk-offs. And the day after both of those losses, Vladimir Gutierrez really settled everything down. And for a team that we've talked about needing a 5th starter, so far at least, he's fit the bill pretty well. Joey Votto obviously has been fantastic. And then things are going well when, Kyle Farmer just had the month that he had in July, shutting up all the shortstop talk. And then you bring Max Schrock off the bench. He replaces the hottest hitter in baseball, and he goes 5 for 5. That's incredible. That's incredible. So the really good news, though, is they're coming home to play a bad Minnesota team and an awful Pirates club. And the one thing you might be able to hang your hat on is over their final 56 games, they play the Pirates 13 times. Their series against the Cubs and the Nationals and the Twins. The schedule shapes up nicely. They still have a heck of a deficit to make up against both Milwaukee and San Diego. But in terms of the way they're playing, you at least have to feel better today than we did when we talked 1 week ago.
Yeah, and you mentioned San Diego. They have been helped, the Reds, I should say, have been helped by the fact that Fernando Tatis Jr. goes back on the injured list once again with that shoulder injury. So we'll see what happens. They're battling for this wild card spot. I was going to ask you another question, but you answered it already. So how about we just leave it at that, Mo?
One take and we're done. I like it.
That's how we do it, Mo. Always great to talk with you, my friend. Let's do it again soon.
All right, Reggie, thanks.
Yes, sir. QB1 is back on the field with a new smile and a newly constructed knee. Coming up, Ben Baby will let us know how he's looking at training camp and how he can help alleviate some pressure off his head coach in a critical season ahead. Welcome back. A beloved former football coach in Cincinnati passed away last week. But as his family and friends said their final goodbyes on Thursday, they reflected on the lives he touched more than the games he won. Keenan Singleton has the story.
The pages have turned, the whites aging into yellow, the black fading into gray.
1954.
The images remain sharp of a man whose legend was so large, they called him a bear.
He knocked 2 guys cold in the scrimmage. Turned around and looked to the sidelines, the people were standing. He said, well, if you stand around, the Bears are going to get you.
That legend only grew for Jack Campbell, a former Cincinnati public high school football coach who passed away at 91 last week. Campbell wasn't larger than life. He stood just 5'9" and 195 pounds as an honorable mention All-American guard at UC in 1954. He was a role model for players like Doug Oppenheimer.
The one saying that he always had, especially for little guys like me, that it's not about the size of the dog in the fight, it's about the fight in the dog.
Campbell would eventually cast his large shadow as the head football coach starting in 1962 at Woodward and then later at Walnut Hills. The Bulldogs ruled public league football under Campbell, where they won 12 league titles in 16 seasons. In 1963, Woodward went undefeated, including wins over St. X and Elder at the Pit.
We had an inkling that we were going to have a good team that year.
Art Paul played and coached under Campbell. He and Oppenheimer hope those accomplishments will live on, and not just on those yellowed pages, but in the CPS Hall of Fame.
Anybody that knew Jack and knew what he did as a coach and as a family man, that's never going to be forgotten. Lessons, lots of lessons learned.
The legacy will be his players. They don't forget.
Keenan Singleton, WCPO, 9 Sports.
Thanks, Kenan. God bless his family. What a legacy. Bengals wrapped up the first week of training camp and is year 3 for head coach Zach Taylor and his staff. Just 6 wins the last 2 seasons combined. But the expectations will be higher, much higher, this fall. And you think that comes with pressure, right?
I mean, there's pressure every single day in this profession, and I think that's why we all like to do it and wouldn't want to have it any other way. And again, we feel like on paper we got a good group, but we have done nothing on the field to earn anyone's respect or to prove that. And that just starts with what we can get done in practice and get ready through these games and be ready for week 1.
Zach Taylor keeping it real. As we get ready for week 1, that means it's time to chat with our guy, Ben Baby. Follow his Bengals coverage on ESPN. Ben, thanks for taking the time. What are your training camp observations as the team gets underway?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing to watch this week was the development of quarterback Joe Burrow and what he was going to look like in practice. Zach Taylor said that he was clear for football activities and Burrow was going to kind of ease his way back into things. And I'll be honest, these first couple practices, Burrow has struggled at times. The first day I thought he looked really good. And then afterwards, the days 2 and days 3, the offense just really didn't seem to have that rhythm. We saw, Burrow maybe look a little uncomfortable in the pocket. They were managing his workload by giving Brandon Allen some of the lighter reps and letting Burrow kind of take those off. And then, I thought Saturday, inside the stadium during the team's back together event, Burrow looked sharp again. He had, one bad throw, probably an interception Von Bell should have had, but, he came right back and had his best throw of camp, a deep out to Jamar Chase down the left sideline. So that's been the big thing to watch is Burrow's development, and we'll see how much more comfortable he gets. And maybe it's just a matter of him getting familiar with the pass rush again, being able to trust himself in the pocket. And like Zach Taylor said, this is all stuff that we're going to expect at the beginning of training camp. This is kind of what training camp is for, to iron these things out so you don't have these issues when you get to week 1.
Yeah, so much of Burrow's game is predicated on being fearless, and now having suffered that major knee injury, do you feel like physically he's improved in any way? He worked with Jordan Palmer this offseason, who noted more velocity on his passes.
Yeah, you can definitely tell in that intermediate passing range that he does have more velocity on the ball. It's definitely something that he worked at. He said one of the things that, he didn't want to bore us with all the technique talk about his throwing motion. But one thing he did say was that he wants to keep all his feet in the ground to generate more power. And as, we're looking at him live in person, he does have more velocity on those intermediate throws. I think the big question is going to be, does that translate to the deep ball? That's something that, they really struggled with last year. And if he can get that extra velocity, it gives him that extra kind of breathing room in the pocket to get things out maybe a half second later or a millisecond later than he needs to if he has the velocity to make up for it. But, that's going to be one thing to watch as we go through camp is, as he feels more comfortable on the knee as well, can he generate enough power going through the body to make sure that he's got the velocity he wants?
The offense gets all the attention, but the defense has some work to do as well. What type of pressure is on that unit coming into the season?
Yeah, a ton of pressure. I think outside of the offensive line as a unit collectively, the defense has the most pressure on it. You look at the amount of money that's been invested on that side of the ball. They gave a big contract to Trey Hendrickson in free agency, gave Sam Hubbard an extension. Last year, they signed DJ Reader and Trey Waynes to big deals. I mean, this is a franchise that traditionally does not give a lot of money to external free agents. And 3 of the 4 biggest deals of the last 2 off seasons are on the defensive side of the ball to guys who weren't here. So there's a lot of pressure on them, a lot of pressure on defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo to get this defense to be where it needs to be. And, I think this defense doesn't necessarily need to win you games. I think the offense, that burden is going to fall on them. It's going to fall on Zach Taylor's unit to do that. But at the same time, the defense will need to come up with big stops when it needs to. It needs to create more pressure, needs better play from its secondary. All in all, that needs to improve in a lot of areas. So there is a lot of pressure on the defensive side of the ball.
Lastly, Ben, Zach Taylor says the fans will be proud of these Bengals, but I know he hopes they'll be proud of him too. Make or break year for him. How critical is this season for his future with the team?
Yeah, I think that's really important, for Zach to do well this year. Like you said, this is a make or break season, I think, for Zach Taylor. We look at the comments that Mike Brown made at the end of last season. He gave Zach a vote of confidence going into year 3, which basically insinuates, well, we want him to come back for one more year, but we want to see what that year is going to look like. And to everybody's defense, I think that everything is always pointed to year 3 being the pivotal year for Zach. Years 1 and 2 were going to be the rebuilding years. When you look at the state of the roster, when you look at, bringing in a new quarterback to replace Andy Dalton, year 3 was when you're going to have the ability to really be competitive. And now it's up to the team to go out and do that. I think the Bengals, they have to, on paper, there's still a lot of question marks. And so if the Bengals can get to around a 500 record and be competitive and push for a playoff berth in December, I think that would be an encouraging sign to bring Zach back for year 4. And the question's going to be, though, as his contract comes closer to an end, I believe it's a 4-year deal for him. You ideally don't want your head coach to be in a lame duck situation. You either want him to have that long-term stability that he's not coaching for his job in any given year. So, if you feel like you like what you see after year 3, the question becomes, are you going to give him a contract extension for maybe a couple of years?
A lot of intrigue coming into this season. It should be a fun ride. Fun to be talking football with you. Let's do it again soon, Ben.
I appreciate it, Reggie. Thank you so much.
So I want to hear from you. What are you expecting from the Bengals this season? What's the record? Will Zach Taylor lead the team to a winning record? Thinking playoffs? Tweet me at Reggie Wilson TV and make sure to use the hashtag SOAS. FC Cincinnati may need to see a specialist. They might be allergic to their new stadium. Coming up, how the Orange and Blue left without a dub at home yet again. Usually teams playing in their home stadium constitutes a home field advantage, but it's been anything but that for FC Cincinnati at TQL Stadium. The Orange and Blue once again can't get a dub on the West End. FCC plays to a 0-0 draw with DC United Saturday in front of a sellout home crowd. Several opportunities for FC Cincinnati to get on the board in this one. The return of Ronald Matarrita from Gold Cup duty, not enough. They do gain a point, though.
Created opportunities as well. Yeah, you need to score one. It's against 10 men. It's not always easy. You see that on the break. They've got quality, but even that after that, you see at the end you get an opportunity. Unfortunately, you don't ever win, but you deserve more.
Time to chat once again with Laurel Pfahler from the Queen City Press. Laurel, appreciate you coming on. Why can't this team get a win at home?
It is mind-boggling. They should be able to just I know that they do feed off that energy, and that energy is there. I think they just keep running into the same problems of just they can't finish when the opportunities are there. It's almost like they get in these chances to win games and they're afraid to just go for it. I'm sure that's not it. They're professional athletes; they are not afraid, but they just lack that kind of killer instinct. I think when they've got those chances to really knock the opponent in the teeth, I guess. So they got to figure it out though, because they're gonna have a stretch toward the end of the season with a lot of home games, and if you can't win at home, at that point, some of these games that are they're not getting points in that they should be, that's going to come back to bite them in the end. So they're going to have to figure that out for sure.
You endured quite the Twitter firestorm from fans last night. Seems like the fans' frustrations are taking over.
Yes, it's almost to the point where if you point out, I put out a simple tweet that the team had moved up in the table. They did. They got a point. They didn't lose, so they got a point, and they did happen to move up. Where they're at in the table, kind of everyone at the bottom is just fighting for, to not be last, basically. So they did move up, and for some reason that just fans didn't like that I pointed that out. They think that that's putting a positive spin on a game that they were clearly disappointed with, and I understand FC Cincinnati should have won that game. They were up a man again. They dominated possession. They had almost 70% possession and still can't get a goal. That's frustrating. But they didn't lose. That's something I'm going to point out as a journalist. So I did, and then just other things. They didn't like that Jaap made the comment that he was happy with the point. That was not the point of his comments. He was disappointed not to get more out of it. He made that clear, and he knows that these points could end up hurting them later that they're not getting. And he said that in his post-game press conference. But just the fact that he even said he was happy with the point is just striking the fans. They're feeling I think kind of like he's satisfied with the results, and he's not. So yeah, it's just the fans are getting frustrated because it's still, if you look at 2019, 2020, a lot of the stats as far as the record's very similar. I think they have one more draw than loss this point last year. The goals that they've allowed is similar to what they've done in the past at this point, 15 games in. They are scoring more goals. That's the one stat that is different, even though they were scoreless last night. Fans are just feeling like they're going through the same thing. The team has spent all this money, and we're not seeing the results that they would like.
Jaap Stam wants to see more wins, but says the club is making progress. What can they try to build on to get to a win against New York on Wednesday?
And that's going to be tough, too. They have a hard time going to New York. That's always a tough place to play. The thing that Jaap was happy with was that they were able to maintain possession. They were moving the ball around well. There were some good things that we saw. They've just got to figure out, they can score goals. We've seen it. They've scored 4 goals. It's just, I asked Nick Hagland after the game if he felt like they had that sense of urgency that they needed when DC United had the red card and lost a man in the 52nd minute. He kind of described it as that they didn't feel like right then they needed to go. There was still plenty of time left. He did point out some things that he thought that they could do better, just crossing the ball in more, just moving forward. He did say they did need to get forward more toward the end of the game, but they didn't feel like right then they needed to. So I personally just didn't feel like I did see that urgency. So I would like to have seen them as soon as they win a man up, just to go for it, show that you're going to take advantage of that opportunity. So I think that's something they've got to figure out. Just, DC did kind of pack the box, and that happens when a team loses a player, but they've got to figure out how to take advantage in those situations and just get a goal.
Laurel, thanks as always for taking the time. We'll catch up again soon.
Appreciate you having me. Thanks for your time.
All right, we'll be right back to wrap up the show. Welcome back. Coming up after the show is In Depth with Graham Benzinger. Check out what's on tap tonight.
This week, we spend the day in Park City with Lindsey Vonn. Arguably the greatest skier ever, opens up about challenging times.
I was depressed and, it was a really hard time.
And the impactful work of her foundation.
You take a child that wants to kill herself, and I can help her.
Plus, she shows us her 24-acre Utah estate.
It's like the stairway to heaven.
All that's coming up next on In Depth right here.
All right, thanks, Graham. Looking forward to that. Well, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun, but we got to go. I'd like to thank my guests Mo Egger, Ben Baby, and Laurel Failer for joining me tonight. And thank you to my village who helped me put this all together. Thank you for watching. Let's do it again next Sunday. Until then, have a good night and a very blessed week.